Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments, and thank you for joining me. So in this video, I want to give my thoughts on the coveted, elusive BGS Black Label cards that are selling for significant premiums on the overall secondary market at present time. For those unaware, right now, as of the recording of this video, depending on which segment of the trading card market you're operating in, pretty much the gold standard for third-party grading is PSA. So most people who are collecting, speculating, or investing in this market are trying to go after PSA 10 condition cards. Now, this is especially true if you're playing in the modern era market for trading cards. And assuming you haven't been living under a rock, this market is currently on fire. It doesn't matter if we're talking about collectible card games like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, One Piece to a lesser extent, or of course, modern era sports cards. A lot of this stuff is ending up being opened and ripped live on YouTube or social media. It's getting sent right to the grading companies, and then it's being flipped right immediately on the secondary market. And you have two groups of people that are pretty much competing for this stuff. You have the speculators that are just buying this stuff up, hoping to flip it immediately on the market for a profit. And you also have the investors and the collectors, meaning the people that really love this stuff, or they want to attempt to invest in it over the long term. Now, there's a lot of risk in this market at present time. That's why I have been putting out a lot of videos as of late on the trading card market. And again, it doesn't matter if you're on the sports card side or the collectible card game side or another segment of the market. Perhaps you're into non-sports trading cards like 1977 Star Wars cards. Items of that nature also are trending at all-time price points right now, especially if they're third-party graded, especially if they're in PSA 10 condition at present time. Now, believe it or not, I really didn't want to do this video just yet. This is a market that I kind of like to watch and see what it does. I don't like to jump to conclusions. I don't like to put a video out that everybody else is already commenting on. Meaning, if there's a segment of the market that's heating up, there's a lot of social media influencers, there's other YouTubers out there that are probably already going to share their 2 cents. The only way I do a video like that is if I have a unique perspective to share that the people who watch this channel can learn from. Because remember, this is a collectibles finance channel. When you're watching Reserved Investments, we look at everything with dollar signs in our eyes. Is it a wise investment over the short term, over the long term? How is this market going to play out? How does this market work in that regard? Now, with that being said, I follow a lot of markets in the intakes and collectibles trade. And one market that I've been following very closely as of late is, of course, the market for collectible cardboard, trading cards. Well, lo and behold, Fanatics hosted an interesting auction just a few days ago. And in this auction, there was a Luigi Pikachu card that was graded by BGS with the coveted black label that sold for $216,000. Now, given the amount of volatility, given the amount of speculation in this market at present time, the sale really didn't surprise me that much, but it kind of, to use a Matrix reference, it kind of was like a splinter in my brain where I had to dissect this numerous ways, numerous times, so that I could attempt to answer the question, the person that paid $216,000 for this card, were they making a wise financial decision, especially over the long term? Now, obviously, for most of you out there, you probably already know the answer. The answer is no. And most of you, probably looking at a sale like this, would have said no right from the get-go. Now, me, given the way this market has been performing lately, I like to pull things apart. I like to look at them from different angles. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to explain to you why I do not like the hype surrounding BGS Black Label cards. And also, I'm going to use this sale as an example to exemplify why I am against paying a premium for these type of cards at present time, especially in the modern era of sports trading cards or even collectible card games like Pokemon. So this is going to be a very interesting video for some of you, and some of you I'm sure will disagree with some of my findings here. So let's go through this and let's analyze this sale. Now, right off the bat, when you see a card like this, a Luigi Pikachu card, selling with the elusive BGS Black label for $216,000, the first thing you should do is look at the population reports and see how many examples of this card in this condition, in this grade, exist at present time. So I did this. I looked at how many examples of this card exist, and lo and behold, this is not the only example in existence. There are actually 2 Luigi Pikachus graded by BGS with the exclusive Black label. So this means somebody paid $216,000 for this card, and it is not a one-on-one. It is not an elusive card that multiple copies were sent to grading companies, mainly BGS, and just one happened to come back in the coveted BGS Black label holder. There are actually 2 in existence right now. Furthermore, if we actually analyze this card, this Luigi Pikachu card was produced in 2016. Now, 2016, if we go back to that particular point in time in my DeLorean time machine, obviously the print runs for Pokemon cards were not as high as they are today in the modern era. We know this just by looking at the numbers, just by looking at the massive speculative frenzy for modern era Pokemon cards, and the Pokemon Company telling us that they upped the print run to meet all that demand. So back in 2016, the one thing that we can say for sure is that print runs were considerably lower across the board. Now, what makes this card unique, this Luigi Pikachu card, is that back in 2016, this card was part of a limited edition special box set that was only sold in Japan, that only had, to my knowledge, 1 printing, and it was pretty much commemorating a crossover event between 2 major video game franchises, obviously that being Super Mario Brothers and, of course, Pokemon. Now, back in 2016, if you wanted to get one of these factory-sealed special box sets, believe it or not, even if you lived in the U.S., if you lived in Europe, if you lived outside Japan and you had access to eBay, or maybe you knew a dealer of Japanese Pokemon cards, these really weren't that hard to get. They were a very quick seller because by 2017, the market pretty much dried up and prices were already starting to escalate for these particular items on the secondary market. Now, by 2019, 2020, when the pandemic hit, all bets were off. People really coveted this particular product. Now, it's very interesting how this played out because there's a lot of these sitting in factory sealed condition still to this very day, to the point where it would be very, very hard to pull a number out and accurately predict how many of these are sitting in true hardcore Pokemon speculators, collectors, investors, collections in factory sealed condition. And I'm sure, I know this for a fact, there are a lot of Pokemon speculators and collectors out there that have more than one of these sitting in their collection, sitting in their basements in factory sealed condition because they knew, with this being a crossover event between 2 heavyweights, Super Mario Brothers and also, of course, Pokemon, there was going to be a lot of continued demand for this product, especially given the fact that it was not released outside of Japan. Now, this is where we get to the bad news. If we do a price history of these BGS Black label Luigi Pikachu cards that have sold over the past few years, you're going to see that back in 2024, literally a year ago, there was a sale of one of these cards. Again, it was a BGS Black Label 10 that sold for roughly $31,000. I think the exact price was $30,600, if I recall correctly. Then, a couple of months back in the year 2025, another one of these BGS Black Label Luigi Pikachu cards sold for $12,000. So this is why I tell you guys, market for stuff like this, especially of the modern era, is extremely volatile and is extremely speculative. In 2024, this card sold for $30,600. In 2025, a couple of months back, this card sold for $12,000. So now, lo and behold, towards the end of the year here, a couple of days ago, through Fanatics, this card then sells for $216,000. Now, obviously, based on the price history, based on the history of this set, based on the popularity of this card, taking all that into account, I cannot understand why, if somebody cared about money, why they would pay $216,000 for this card at present time. And it is possible, I want to be very clear here, because I am a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade. I see everything from all these different angles. It is possible that this particular individual just has a ton of money and just doesn't care about the overall market. Meaning, he saw this card, he wants to own it, he got into a bidding war, two people were going at it, and he just went all in, and he ended up paying $216,000 for this card. That is probable. I'm not going to discount that. But anybody that is attempting to park money in a card like this and invest in this, in my opinion, is not understanding how these markets work, especially over the long term. Now, adding another spin to this, I want to state that if the buyer of this card would have just took the $216,000 and put it in a simple S&P 500 index fund, we know over the long term, the yearly average return on an S&P 500 index fund is roughly 10%. That means this person's pretty much giving up an opportunity cost of close to $22,000 per year to hold this card in this condition. Now, all things being equal, it is possible, especially when somebody is buying an item at this level, meaning an item that costs $216,000. More than likely, this person probably has already millions of dollars sitting in an S&P 500 index fund. So in this case, this individual is probably trying to diversify away from the financial markets, away from traditional asset classes, assuming they are buying this for investment and not just because they have an ungodly amount of money and don't care how they spend it. So I do want to make that clear. Now, another thing that we have to keep in mind here, given the fact that this market is inherently volatile, we don't know if over the next 2, 3, 5 years, if one of these comes up for bid, it is possible that this person ends up having the last laugh and he consigns it to auction and it ends up selling for $300,000 to $400,000. Now, if that's the case, this person did phenomenally well. But given the volatility, given the price history of this card, and the fact that there are so many factory sealed box sets sitting out there in collections that are unopened that potentially contain this card, in my opinion, it is too much of a risk to take on. Especially when you look up the value of this card compared to that of a PSA 10 counterpart. If you really want to own this card, you want to attempt to invest in it, I would not recommend it in any way, shape, or form at present time. But if you're really dead set on investing in this card, just go after a PSA 10. Don't go after a BGS Black Label 10. It is completely ridiculous, the premiums being paid for modern era cards like this, simply because they are in a case and a grading label that reads BGS Perfect 10 subgrades. Therefore, this card should be selling for a premium. Now, to be fair, it really isn't BGS's fault because pretty much the market sets the price. It's whenever that auction goes off, whatever the high bidders are willing to pay, however that auction ends, that's pretty much the price being paid for this item. And when we apply this to what's happening with CGC, remember, CGC also has a similar grading tier that can be compared to the BGS Black Label. That is known as the CGC 10 Pristine, but the market really hasn't responded in kind to cards that are graded CGC 10 Pristine as they have to BGS Black Label cards. So this is a very interesting market development where we have a grading company over here that isn't even the market leader. But if they grade something and it is a perfect 10 and has this wonderful black label, for the most part, it's going to sell for a significant premium, even over a PSA 10, which is currently the market leader, especially when we talk Pokemon cards. So it's very interesting to see how this is developing, but overall, from an investment standpoint, especially over the long term, I would never, ever recommend a client who comes to me looking to allocate capital to this segment of the market. I would never, ever tell them, in most cases, to go after a BGS Black Label. I would tell them that if they want to play in this market, they have to use extreme caution because it's extremely speculative and volatile. Just look at the price history I pointed out of this Luigi Pikachu card that sold for $216K. And you're going to see that the market itself is anything but stable. And this is where I caution against parking money in modern era cards and collectibles like this, especially over the long term. Now, if you want to talk vintage, there's a lot of opportunities that you can invest in right now that most likely will work out over the long term. It is a different market environment, though, even though we're still talking about trading cards, than that of the modern era. For some weird reason, there's a lot of speculators, there's a lot of collectors that are really, really going after the modern era graded cards, even though people like me, other people out there in the YouTube community, other experts in the trade try to steer people against this. But the amount of speculation, the amount of price volatility is really what's attracting these people to this particular market at present time. And it's very scary. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What is your take on BGS Black Labels? Because as I've said, for you to have something that you're sending to BGS that you want them to assess, hoping that you get the coveted Black Label, you have to understand that those cards, they have to be from the modern era. If you read the requirements for the BGS Black Label, those cards have to be produced in 1980 or later. Now, it's very interesting that BGS has limited themselves to only allowing this Black Label to exist for modern era cards and collectibles. That's why, honestly, I consider this, how do I want to say this? I consider this to be a gimmick. It's not something that I would ever recommend somebody partake in. Now, it's true, again, being a consultant in the trade, I see all angles. I have people that come to me and they really know what they're doing. They spend a lot of money on opening modern era Pokemon cards, sports cards, and the like, and they send a lot of this stuff off to be graded. If they have something that will come back, a BGS Black Label, and they're going to flip it in the open market right away, I usually will tell them to do it because that's profit taking. Right now, the market's hot. You always sell into the hype. On the other end of the spectrum, though, I have people that are spending tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars chasing cards like this, and they think they're going to go higher in the future. And I think that's very risky when we look at the modern era of trading cards and how the grading companies, the auction companies, and also even the trading card companies themselves have pretty much exploited this market for their own gain. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you are subscribed to this channel, I will see you in another upcoming video.